Alright, welcome back. We are Game 2014 and the Fall 2020 semester at George Brown, and it's Week 5, Part 1 of our broadcast. Right now we're going to be talking about our Assignment 1, Part 2 details. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll get right into stuff. But first, let's take a look at where we are. Right now we're sitting at Week 5. We're going to be talking about optimizations for mobile. The first optimization we're going to be talking about today is the object pool, which you guys should know about. And we'll talk about that anyway, and I'm going to assume that you don't know about it. So we'll talk about that. But first, let's get into talking about Assignment 1 details, or Assignment 1 Part 2. So Assignment 1 Part 2 details have been posted up online, but it goes something like this. This one is due Sunday, October 25th, 2020 at midnight. So that's like a couple of weeks and a half, 2.5 weeks from now, approximately, for you guys. It's worth 15% of your final grade. What this one does is it adds in logic to the assets that you added in Part 1. But there are some little nuances that we should talk about. So, again, the first part, and I'm not sure why this is cut off and doesn't say Part 1. Why doesn't it say Part 1? It should say Part 1. Arg. Okay. Of course it doesn't. And, yeah, menu. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the menu screen. So the menu screen is what we have before, but what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that it transitions to the play scene or the instruction screen. Okay? Every time an option is selected, you're going to get some sound effects. And you're also going to have some music for this scene, because every scene should have its own music. All right? So that's something you should have kind of gotten for your or acquired for your assets. For your initial Part 1, which was your plan and your user interface. Okay, so that's the first menu scene. Instruction screen, it's hopefully it's not a wall of text, is what I asked you to do last week, or the first assignment, and we do definitely need some sound effects and music for that. Your gameplay screen, you're just getting 3 points just to have a gameplay screen. Some people, for whatever reason, when they do this assignment, they try to do it in one screen or something. And they're going to lose lots of points if you do something like that. If it's only one screen and you don't shift between one screen and another screen, yeah, you'll lose a bunch of points here. A game over screen, again, you're going to have, there's no high score right now, but the only thing you care about is sound effects and music and some kind of UI element that'll take you back to the first screen. Michael, you should have different sounds for every screen. So different music. And it could be something a little bit more, more mellow or whatever. But I'm going to try and make it so there's different sounds, because there's going to be some kind of sound specialist out there, a sound guy or a sound girl, and they're going to want to add some kind of additional sounds because they're interested, and I got to make it fair for them. So there's got to be different music in all the scenes. Okay? Doesn't have to be like dramatically different. Awesome. Thank you. Do we have to make a pause state to Assignment 1? No, I didn't ask for that. Okay, the player will control an avatar, vehicle, or character. Write some code that allows the player to control the avatar through touch input. And we're going to do a little bit of that today because we have to, but we're going to continue with that over the next couple weeks. It says touch input or accelerometer. Okay, it can't be just, keyboard controls, right? So if you hand me something that is not compliant with mobile, you'll lose 15 marks for your controller or something thereabouts. It has to be compatible with mobile. All right. The player controller should allow the player's avatar to trigger weapons or other devices that they can use to defeat the computer-controlled enemies. We'll talk about making a little custom controller for ourselves. And appropriate animation should be included for the player's avatar. All right. So that's something that you have to you should have already planned for animations. I talked about that. It's got to be very simple, like literally just, it could be something that's consistent. You don't have to make it so that there's a lot of different kinds of animations unless you're moving around and you're changing directions, or if you're kind of a top-down game, you may have to. But if you're like, let's say, some kind of top-down scrolling game, your player's avatar may just have like a little flame at the bottom, which would satisfy the requirements of this. Your game will include enemies and hazards with simple AI behavior, line of sight, detection radius, and blah, blah, blah. The enemy or hazards in the game should be abundant enough to challenge the player, but not impossible to beat. We talked about this last time. You will write code to enable your enemies and or hazards to detect, move, trigger weapons, and also be defeated. Appropriate animations should be included for the enemies and hazards. 15 marks for enemies and hazards. Okay? So there has to be some kind of something that prevents the player from winning easily. The game will write code so that pickups... your game will write code. No, you will write code. I like this one. This is like a late night, update. You will write code so that pickups, treasure, or loot is randomly generated, which will provide opportunities to generate points for the player aside from killing enemies. So you'll write some code. Your game will include a scoring system. Write code so that your UI elements will show the player's score or progress in the gameplay screen. The player must have a life counter or health status. Write code to enable this functionality. Your game will include sound effects. Write code to enable this one. Write code to enable that one. You need to write code for each one of these points to enable all the functionality that you planned for in part 1. That's basically what this thing is. Internal documentation has been expanded to include some comment headers for functions and classes, as well as contextual variable names. You actually will have variable names this time around. And inline comments. If you need inline comments sometimes to describe some code, again, I would recommend not over-commenting. Okay? And it says your decision tree matrix. Look at that. Like, that's a copy-paste thing right there. That will describe your structure. Describe your code. Is what this should say. Wow, Tom, I was definitely tired last night when I was doing this one. Okay. There we go. You include a final draft of a short game design document for your game. Provide an update for the following sections. Version history, controls, screen descriptions. Why version history? Because you're going to have some updates. Controls, you're going to include an update with your final control scheme. You may change that. You may have planned something, and then once you start doing it, you're realizing, hey, this can't work. Screen descriptions, new screenshots. I'm looking for some new screenshots here because you're going to have some in-gameplay screenshots that I want. Or some people might want to add a short animated GIF. Okay. Worst case, or if you really are crazy, you can make a short video that you embed inside of your external document. It's up to you, right? I don't recommend anything crazier than a short animated GIF, or just a plain screenshot is okay. Levels. Include an update on this section that describes your finalized game levels or challenge levels. Maybe you're only going to have one. If so, just say there's only one level, right? Enemies. Include an update in this section detailing your enemies and hazard final behavior. So what is it finally going to have, after you've, done the AI? I want you guys to update this. So there's going to be a second version of your game design document. Again, very small changes. GitHub as normal, short video as normal, and now the mark breakdown is 75 points for functionality. Notice that there's a mark shift, 5 marks for internal documentation, 6 marks for external documentation, 4 marks for version control, and 10 marks for your video presentation for a total of 100 marks or points. And this is worth 15% of your final grade. Okay, so this shouldn't be too shocking. I told you this was coming, and you know what's happening. This is just part 2 of that first assignment. So hopefully you're just going to slot those assets right in, and with some code, you're going to make this work, and it's going to be it can be a fun game. You've got 2.5 weeks. Please don't leave it till the last minute to say, so Tom, how do I add touch controls again? Like, you want to kind of address those things as soon as possible. Some of it you can look up on your own, but the other parts we'll talk about in class. All right? Any questions around assignment 1, part 2 for this one? Yes, Kat has questions. Ask your questions, Kat. You don't have to come on the mic if you don't have to, if you don't want to.
I'm on the mic because I'm too lazy to type. I'm worried about, I'm just scared, I just need reassurance. I'm worried about the Genymotion simulator whatnot, having to click on it. It's going to be slow in responding, so it's going to be difficult to test this game. And I don't have an Android device. Can you reassure me?
Yeah, it's going to be okay, because you're going to test it a lot in the editor first. So first you're going to test in the editor. You can actually play it in the editor, right?
Yeah.
So worst case scenario, I mean, you can troubleshoot in the editor first and then push it across to Genymotion, which is what you would do anyway in the real life. You wouldn't push it across to your phone right away every single time, right?
Yeah, but I just mean from making the video, it's going to look kind of crap, but can you just assume that it doesn't, when you watch the video, can you pretend like it's working?
I will pretend. And you can always tell me, you can always say, look, here's my editor. The editor works like this. Here's Jenny Motion. Just Tom, this just so you know the difference. It's your video. You can make it look like whatever you want, Kat.
Okay,
right?
thank you. That helps.
I'm going to be understanding. Don't worry. It's not going to be like, oh, Kat made a terrible video, and you know what? Her Jenny Motion is too slow because her machine is terrible. That's it. I'm going to dock her 20 marks. Right? Nah, it's not going to happen. Right? But thank you for that concern. Appreciate that. Anyone else have any questions or concerns around Assignment 1, Part 2? What about if you didn't, for whatever reason, finish Assignment 1, Part 1, and you want to still do Assignment 1, Part 2? You still have a chance to do it, but you can only get maximum marks for this one, which means, remember, these two assignments make up 25% of your grade. You can still do Assignment 1, Part 2, even if you haven't done Assignment 1, Part 1, but you just got to get all those assets. Everything that you would need for Assignment 1, Part 2, you need from Assignment 1, Part 1. So you still have to kind of do it. Worst case, if there's a real issue and you couldn't do it for some reason or another, please connect with me and we'll see what we can do. Worst case scenario, you'll get part marks, which I'm willing to entertain. Okay, for a bit of time anyway, not forever. All right, any other questions around Assignment 1, Part 2? Which you just build your game and drag and drop it into BlueStacks. Build your game and drag and drop. As long as it works, if it works on BlueStacks, it'll work on Jenny Motion for me, John. Okay? Or I also have an Android device I can test it with. Don't worry. I have lots of ways of testing your game out. Even if you're a Mac user, I can still test you out. Even if you did an iOS build instead of an Android build. Okay, let's go from this. Are there any questions related to this game, this assignment number 1, Part 2? That's important. If not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video, and we'll just have this video just for Assignment 1, Part 2, and then we'll go on to the other stuff. So I'm going to stop this video now.